David Grossman there. Well, let's have a think about this. I'm joined by songwriter Helienne Lindvall, music industry journalist Eamonn Forde, and by Skype from Poughkeepsie by the musician Amanda Palmer. Helienne, first of all, you've been on Spotify.
But my music has. I've been as a person too, obviously.
I mean your music's been. Just tell us, what happens as a musician? You get a statement at the end of the month, or?
Yeah, as a songwriter, I get a statement from PRS that will pay me for Spotify.
Performing Rights
the Performing Rights Society. And me being Swedish, I get a payment from STIM, which is the Swedish version of PRS. And in Sweden, Spotify is almost the only game in town, so there you will have a whole section that just is Spotify. But it'll be very, very little.
How little are we talking about?
Well, I had, recently I had a song, title track on an album by an established Swedish act. Not at the height of their career, probably a bit past the height of their career. But I made, in my first royalty statement, £3 from that.
This is a songwriting.
It was as a songwriter, and I had written 50% of that song, and there was no money going to a publisher. It was going straight to me. It didn't cover the tube ride to the studio that day.
You get other money from the PRS or the Swedish equivalent for pubs or other radio plays. And are they much, much bigger than what you're getting from Spotify?
I get more from that, yes, and I know that if you compare it to the amount of people that are listening, it's probably, it's comparing apples and oranges. A lot of people are comparing radio to Spotify, but of course Spotify is an on-demand service and radio is not.
Yeah. A lot of people listening to radio don't want to hear that particular song, whereas on Spotify you do. Eamonn, just give us the potted defence of Spotify.
Well, I can kind of present myself as a complete apologist, but the model that Spotify is taking is they say it's about scale, it's about long-term income, and that's the big debate about, are these tiny payments going to over time add up to be enough? Because the old model used to be you bought a download or you bought a CD and you paid up front, and you could listen to that as many times as you want, but you'd made your single payment. So the idea is that these popular songs will play over and over and over again, and people will make more money. So that's the vision, or that's the kind of the utopian ideal that they're presenting. It's still quite early days in terms of this as a service, in terms of consumer behaviour. So to actually take a long-term view of that is still quite difficult. So there's a lot of kind of quixotic thinking, a lot of fingers being crossed around this at the moment. So we're at the very early stages is all we can say. So that Spotify wants it to go that way.
Whether it does. Yeah. Let me bring in Amanda Palmer. And, Amanda Palmer, just tell us, are you someone who has music on Spotify? Are you happy with what you get out of Spotify?
Yeah, I kind of, I just have a global philosophy that I'll put my music anywhere and everywhere. I got off a label a few years ago and decided to take, as a street performer myself, I was one of those mediocre buskers who made my few $100s a day in my early 20s and was really happy to not have a day job and at least be able to make a couple $100. And so I've always approached it with a street performer mentality, which is you lead with sharing your art for free and just being appreciative of that small sliver of the population who will actually stop and appreciate and give. And I think, what you're seeing now, because the internet doesn't really work like the street, there's this kind of sense of responsibility that people will stop. And if they listen, they'll feel this kind of moral responsibility to throw money in. And I've experimented a lot with different pay what you want systems. I used Kickstarter really successfully. I think
Explain Kickstarter to us.
Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform that's actually had a lot of success in the UK as well. It's basically, I go directly to my fans, ask them to pre-fund an album by buying it 6 months in advance, and they lay down their 10, 20, 50 pounds, depending on what kind of package they get. And they directly fund me with a small cut going to Kickstarter and the payment processor. But then you, as a musician, you then have to run your own manufacturing and distribution business. And
how well off are
really
you?
Curious.
How well off are you, Amanda? Did you have a private jet? Do you have a rock star lifestyle? Do you have chauffeurs and
Well, I'm married to a pretty successful writer, so that skews the equation. But no, I mean, I didn't get in this line of work for the money, honestly. And when I realized the realities.
Oh, it's frozen. We've frozen. Let me bring. I think we've got Amanda's view. You see, Eamonn, I do wonder whether the whole. I mean, this is for both of you really. Whether the whole idea of just being paid for the music, for people to listen to the recorded version of the music, is perhaps a bit.
Well, I think I was listening to also the VT before we started, and there are a lot of people that are involved in making music. Not every band is, self-contained. There was an article recently about the year before last, the top 100 songs sold in the top chart 100 chart in the UK. 95% of those songs were actually co-written by people that were not the performer. And those people do not, I mean, the touring, merchandise, and branding and brand partnerships don't count for them. All they have is the music. And I believe that with the whole Taylor Swift story, that her whole thing is that she wants to kind of get back to the value, the value of the actual music.
But, Eamonn, is it right to think Spotify just isn't making enough money to pass more on to these musicians? I mean, if they're not making anything...
Well, they've gone public and they said that they pay roughly 70% of their revenues through to the rights owners, so that goes to record companies and publishers, and then how that's distributed to the artists is a whole other debate that Spotify's not involved with. But they're still losing a lot of money. It's a company that's been kind of hemorrhaging millions and millions of pounds every year for the last 7 years. So they've accrued a huge debt. They're kind of running on the false diesel of kind of venture capitalist funding at the moment, and they may potentially be going to an IPO where the owners and investors make a huge amount of money. But even as a service itself, it's not profitable. So that begs a wider question about, is this model itself sustainable? Possibly in the long term it is, but we have to wait and see.
Eamonn, Helienne, and Amanda Palmer, thank you all very much indeed.